the nastiest criminals people have ever dealt with. Story 1. A thief's miscalculation. The college was always noisy, especially at lunchtime when all the students gathered in the food court. The place was full of life, but in the midst of this bustle, sometimes trouble happened. On that day, nothing seemed to portend trouble. My friend and I were sitting at a table. He briefly stepped away for another cup of coffee, and I decided to mind my own business. But just a couple minutes later, he came back with a worried look on his face. His backpack, which contained a $1,400 laptop, was missing. It was a shock. It all happened so quickly that no one noticed any suspicious people or any sign of the thief. We searched the entire food court, but the backpack was gone. The expensive laptop on which a friend had stored important study materials, term papers, personal photos, and a lot of valuable information was gone. College administrators and security promised to help, but there was little hope for a return. It seemed that whoever had stolen the laptop had already managed to escape and resell it safely. For a few days, the friend was in a depressed state, coming to terms with the loss, but I couldn't let it go. Something inside me told me that the laptop could still be found. The idea of looking around the classifieds for tech for sale on popular websites suddenly popped into my head. It was just a hunch, but maybe the thief would decide to get rid of the stolen stuff quickly over the internet. Amidst numerous theft stories, I knew that some thieves don't act too smartly. Thus began my daily routine. From morning till evening, I looked through hundreds of ads, checking every offer related to selling laptops. The days passed in monotony. Every ad seemed like a waste of time, but something told me that sooner or later I would come across the right one. The important goal was to find the exact same laptop my friend had. A week later, when my faith was already beginning to wane, I came across one ad, the usual headline, "Selling laptop, urgent, inexpensive." The price was a little below market, but that wouldn't have caught my eye if it weren't for one photo. When I opened the image, I immediately noticed something unusual. The seller probably hadn't bothered to erase the traces of computer use, and on the screen of the laptop you could see the name of the account. It was my friend's name. Not believing my luck, I reread the ad several times. There could be no mistake. The thief himself had provided the proof on a platter. Further development of events was a matter of technique. We went to the police and provided all the evidence we had collected: photo, date, and even the exact location of the alleged seller. Story 2. Credit card theft and a curiosity order. Emma's life was going on as usual until something unexpected and disturbing happened. It all started on an ordinary day when she received a notice from the bank. They informed her that her credit card had been used for a major purchase. A brand new MacBook Pro had been ordered. At first, Emma thought it was just a system error or a family member had used the card without her knowledge. But the more she thought about it, the clearer it became that something was wrong. No one close to her had placed an order, and Emma certainly hadn't planned such a purchase. Her suspicions were confirmed when she realized it was the work of scammers. They had somehow obtained her credit card details and used it to buy expensive appliances. Different scenarios started running through her mind, but soon Emma got a new surprise. The MacBook she had ordered had been shipped to her own address. It seemed absurd, but it was real. The scammers had made a grave mistake by selecting "send to billing address" when placing the order. It was only a couple days later when the courier delivered the coveted box with the long-awaited MacBook Pro. Emma was seething with emotion. How could this happen? Fraudsters used her card but sent the purchase to her. But her gut told her that this wasn't the end of the story. Something about the whole thing was too strange, and Emma decided to wait to see what would happen next. Events unfolded rapidly. The next day, Emma received a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end of the line introduced himself as an employee of a large electronics chain. Let's call it Tech Market. The caller said that there had been a mistake and they had sent the ordered laptop to the wrong address by mistake. According to him, the computer was supposed to be delivered to another customer, but supposedly a system error caused the package to be sent to Emma. At first, it might have seemed true. We're all human and mistakes happen. But soon, her suspicion took over. The employee was insistent on leaving the box containing the MacBook Pro outside the house. According to him, a delivery service was supposed to come and pick it up shortly. Something about this story seemed too suspicious. How often do such large companies ask their customers to simply leave expensive tech at the door? The questions were too many. Emma decided not to rush into action. She contacted the bank and the police the same day, giving them all the information from the purchase to the strange call. Fortunately, Emma acted in time. The bank was able to block the card and cancel the suspicious transaction, and the MacBook Pro she already had was officially hers, since the purchase had been made with her funds, albeit fraudulently. Story 3. Our parents stole their own car. It was an ordinary evening when Monica's parents were returning home from dinner. There was no sign of trouble. It was just an ordinary trip down a familiar road that they had traveled hundreds of times. This time, however, an unexpected twist of fate awaited them. As they were driving down a quiet street, something caught their attention. There was a car moving towards them, which seemed familiar. At first, Monica's parents didn't pay much attention to it, but after a few seconds, they recognized it as their second car, the one that was supposed to be in the parking lot of their house. The heart of both of them beat harder. It was their car, and it clearly wasn't being driven by them. The decision came instantly. Many thoughts ran through their minds, but there was no doubt. Monica's parents immediately turned their car around and started chasing the stolen car. No one expected such a meeting on the road, but they had a small trump card, a spare set of keys to this car, which they had taken with them by luck. Adrenaline was running high, but they knew they had to act coolly and not draw attention to themselves. Keeping a safe distance, the parents followed the stolen car, trying not to lose sight of it. They couldn't believe that they had stumbled upon their car so randomly in such a huge city. The further the chase went, the more questions arose. Who were these people, and how did they even get into their car? But there was no time for pondering. They needed to act. After a few minutes of tense driving, the carjackers seemed to have decided to make a stop. Perhaps they didn't realize they were being followed, or perhaps they just felt confident in the stolen car. As soon as the car pulled to the side of the road, the parents realized this was their chance. They stopped a safe distance away, waited for the thieves to leave the car, and quietly approached it. With bated breath, they approached the car, nervously pulling their spare keys out of their pockets. A second, and the car doors opened. A thought flashed through their minds. It was now or never. The thieves, who had apparently relaxed and gone about their business, didn't even notice that their booty no longer belonged to them. The parents quickly got into their car and started the engine. At that moment, they knew they had done the right thing. It was their car, and they got it back without a fight. They immediately reported the incident to the police, explaining the whole situation, from a chance encounter with the stolen car to its recovery with spare keys. Law enforcement officers arrived quickly, taking the report and launching an investigation. The police were impressed by the way Monica's parents recovered the car on their own and even more cleverly avoided a conflict with the car thieves. Story 4. A night guest at 3 a.m. This story happened a few years ago to Mark's fiance's family. It all started one quiet night when no one expected anything unusual. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning, the time when everyone should have been asleep. But instead, the silence was broken by an unexpected sound. The knocking on the door came suddenly, rough and insistent, as if someone wanted to get in at all costs. Everyone in the house woke up at once, for knocking on the door so late in the day was not a good thing. The father of Mark's fiancée, John, a man of strong character, did not like anyone disturbing the peace of his family. He walked out of the bedroom, agitated and irritated, heading for the front door. Various thoughts flashed through his mind. Maybe it was the neighbors or someone had the wrong address. When he opened the door, however, he saw something completely out of place at this hour. There was a guy standing on the doorstep, either drunk or under the influence of some substance. His eyes were cloudy and his gait unsteady, but despite that, he stood as brazenly as if he had come by invitation. John didn't have the strength to stand for it. He didn't hesitate to ask the boy what the hell he wanted in their house in the middle of the night, but the uninvited guest's reaction was unexpected. With genuine surprise, he looked at John and said he had come for a party. There wasn't even a hint of humor in his voice. He really thought he was at the right place. John was stunned by such absurdity, and the only thing he could do at that moment was to close the door in front of the intruder's nose. But it didn't end there. After a few minutes, it became clear that the guy wasn't just going to leave. He kept trying to to get into the house as if he was sure that here, within these walls, waiting for his cherished party. John was not going to tolerate such insolence, and, shouting that there was no party here, told the stranger to get away. But the man was persistent. Looking around, the guy noticed a garage, which was partially ajar, and, without hesitation, decided to break in. Once inside the garage, he approached the car belonging to Mark's future mother-in-law. For unknown reasons, the guy decided that this was his ticket to the party. He got into the car as if he intended to drive away, not realizing that he was in an even more dangerous situation. Meanwhile, John had already realized that things were getting serious. He called the police, knowing that the intruder would not leave so easily. But John was not going to wait idly. He drew his gun and took his faithful companion, a German shepherd weighing more than 50 kilograms, out into the street. His dog was a true protector of the family, and its mere presence was enough to instill fear in any intruder. The guy, seeing the huge dog and the armed owner of the house, instantly realized that he had made a huge mistake. He tried to jump out of the car and run, but it was too late. At that moment, police officers arrived on the street. Having assessed the situation, they immediately detained the guy. Later, it became clear that he was really under the influence of alcohol and drugs, and mistook the house with some place where the party was to be held. This misunderstanding almost cost him his freedom and his health. He was incredibly lucky that John and his family showed self-control, preventing a more serious conflict. The cops took the kid away, and the family was finally able to breathe a sigh of relief. Story 5. A robber who gave himself away at the scene of the crime. This story started out as a routine crime story, but quickly turned into a curiosity everyone remembered with irony. One of Mark's co-workers, Michael, had been working at a gas station for several years. It was a routine job, selling fuel, cigarettes, and snacks to customers, checking equipment, and keeping the workplace in order. But one day, his life made a sharp turn, and in the center of events was Michael himself, only on the other side of the cash register. One night there was a robbery at the gas station. It was the most ordinary working day for the cashier, who, as always, was engaged in routine business. The store was practically empty when two masked men burst inside. One of them held a gun and quickly demanded the proceeds. The other stood silently by, but his gaze roamed the counter as if he knew every corner of the place. Everything was so familiar that it seemed the robber wasn't even nervous. The cashier, frightened and not knowing what to do, began to comply with the demands. He opened the cash register and gave the money, but this was not enough for the robbers. One of them demanded a block of cigarettes, which should have been under the counter. Usually such details were known only to the gas station employees, but the cashier was unaware of what was under there. He replied that there were no cigarettes there, to which came the unexpected reply, "There are cigarettes there. I know for a fact because I work here myself." These words became the key moment in the story. In the heat of the moment, the robber forgot about his mask and, in fact, gave himself away. The cashier did not immediately realize what had happened, but after a few seconds he guessed that the robber was one of the employees. Perhaps because of fear and shock, the cashier did not react to this confession instantly, but suspicion was already brewing inside him. Michael, not realizing his mistake, continued to act as if everything was going according to plan. He and his partner collected the money and cigarettes, then quickly left the gas station, disappearing into the night. It would seem that the crime was a success, and now they could quietly rejoice in their loot. However, the tracks had already begun to lead to Michael, and he himself helped the investigation by his inattention. Story 6. How a scammer paid for his credit history at my expense. In today's world, credit card data theft has become one of the most common types of fraud. But sometimes those who dare to commit such crimes show an amazing level of recklessness. This story begins with a certain person stealing his credit card details without Scott's knowledge. Usually such incidents come as an unpleasant shock to the victim. But what happened next exceeded all possible expectations. One morning, Scott received a notification from his credit card organization about suspicious suspicious activity on his card. Suspicious transactions popped up. Someone had used his information to pay his credit report. Scott was surprised and at first couldn't believe his eyes. What was even stranger was that the report was not in his name, but in the name of the person who had stolen his data. As soon as the information arrived, Scott realized that this was not just a random system glitch, but an actual attempted theft. After some thought, he decided to act. Scott immediately contacted the bank and filed a police report, realizing that the proceedings could not be delayed. While the case was being investigated, he received a letter from the credit card company. As it turned out, the man's credit report was itemized down to the smallest detail. Since the payment for the report was made from Scott's card, all the data, including the fraudster's name, address, and other personal information, was in his possession. Scott was shocked at how stupidly the criminal had behaved. Not only had the fraudster stolen the data, but he had used it to obtain information about his own credit history, which essentially automatically revealed his identity. This mistake could have cost him his freedom, because the information Scott obtained was direct evidence of guilt. So, with all the data in hand, Scott decided to check out what he could find about the man on social media. In just a few minutes of searching, he found his Facebook profile. The page had photos, posts, and personal information that further confirmed that this was the same person who had stolen his credit card information. He couldn't believe how easy it was to expose the fraudster, all because of a stupid mistake by the criminal himself.